Yo, yo, are you confused about calorie deficit? Are you confused about micros? Are you confused about macros? If you are, we're going to break all that down for you today on this episode of Mark Bell's Power Project. Check it out.
Ready to rock. Nice shirt too, Andrew. Looking dope.
Mm-hmm. Appreciate it. Hit record.
And Nsima, you're going to be excited, man. We got some new apparel. That's really, really good. We got some new apparel that's very Lulu-esque.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
You'll be pumped.
Yeah,
okay. It'll squeeze the bicep perfectly.
Yeah, I saw Tom wearing a nice shirt, and I was like, "Damn, that's pretty good." Like, well, where's that from? And he just looked down. He was like, "We're coming out with it soon." I'm like, dude, that's sick. Yeah, so I'm pretty pumped for that too. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, fire it up.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, today's topic, we're going to talk about what we always talk about: trying to implement and bring in some discipline. And Nsima kind of mentioned earlier that this was going to be something where it's not only applicable to diet. I had a hard time saying that word, I guess. Maybe I should avoid it. But it doesn't only apply to your diet. It applies to other things in your life where you're trying to make a change. And we think that sometimes, and we've failed many times over, that's how we know some of this stuff, sometimes that you're maybe trying to make a change that is just maybe too big, maybe too large. And so how can we implement smaller change? How can we implement just kind of smaller steps? Let's kind of maybe, Nsima, let's start out by talking about your transition into jiu-jitsu, because I know that you did you did soccer as a kid, you did bodybuilding, and then you from bodybuilding to powerlifting, probably very natural. But jiu-jitsu is, I'm sure there's similar discipline and things like that apply to it, but it seems way different than any three of those other sports that you ever messed with. So how did you start to integrate jiu-jitsu where you're like, hey, starting on Monday, I'm going every day for the next 5 years? Or how did you start to bring something like that in? Because it's very difficult.
Yeah, I think the thing I wanted to think about was like the aspect of just having to dive into something. Because me and my buddy were talking about it the other day. Jiu-jitsu is something that literally just doesn't make any sense, like doesn't make any logical sense. And when I say that, it's like when you think about boxing, right? If somebody were coming at you like this, right? Like, and they were just walking at you, instinctually, someone would look at that and you'd punch in the stomach. You don't have to be taught that. You just be like, okay, well, their stomach's open. Let me punch them in the stomach, right? But when it comes to jiu-jitsu, like nothing makes sense. Where you have to grab somebody doesn't make any sense. Where you have to underhook, it doesn't make any sense. All the positions, nothing is like intuitive. So like it didn't make sense for a long time, but I didn't start going like 7 days a week. I started like 2 or 3, but I just had to start doing it. And that's what I think a lot of people, there's a barrier because, there's a lot of things you don't understand. So what people try to do is they try to do a lot of research, get a lot of understanding, maybe get some base knowledge, and then go in and start trying to do something. I think it's very similar with diets or exercise. A lot of people try to do some research to what's the best program or what's the best diet that I should do, instead of just trying to figure out a way to start and dive in and then work their way through as they're going through it.
I believe some of this is from like the Buddhist culture. I listen to a lot of stuff from Alan Watts. If people listening have never listened to Alan Watts before, go do some mushrooms or go take some kratom and listen to some Alan Watts and you'll have a blast. But he really is unbelievable. He has got some of these different ways of looking at things, and he believes that humans are, integrated into the universe, and that we just try too hard. And so he kind of says, like, you don't really need to try to do anything. You need to just start doing. And if you look at it from the perspective of a child, my kids played all kinds of games at school when they were young, and they would always talk about these games, and they were games I've never played before. I wasn't familiar with the types of games they were playing, but it basically like kickball type of game and Foursquare or something, I think they kept calling it. Mm-hmm. And, how would a kid who's 6 or 7 go from not ever playing that to wanting to play it every single day, to having such a high level of interest to it. Well, they saw their friends do it. It was something that struck them as interesting. It looked like it was fun. And so they just did it. Like, rather than this kind of idea of like, I'm going to try to do these things, with like, Yoda philosophy, try not, there is no try. It's do or do not. Mm-hmm. And if you just think about when you go to do something, it's okay to mess it up, because a kid doesn't think the first time a kid throws, even when a kid's not good at throwing a baseball, they're like, did you see how fast that went? Hey, my nephews, they're always like, Uncle Mark, watch how far I can throw this, and it goes 5 feet, and I'm all impressed with it. Right? Mm-hmm. So you want to think about it like more, if you think of everything as kind of more of a game, like when you're playing a video game and your guy dies, you have multiple lives, you can just hit reset and you can just start playing over. When your guy dies, it's not a tragic thing for you. You're like, oh, well, next time I'll hit the button sooner, so my guy jumps over the alligator or whatever the hell it is that you're trying to get past. And it's all learning. You're learning by correcting errors throughout the whole process. So I think this quote from Alan Watts, I really like it a lot, but it's very confusing. He says, you don't need to do anything at all. You mustn't try not to do anything either, because that is doing something. So when you think about that, you're like, wait a second, how do I do stuff but not try? How do I? And the key is simply just to start, just get momentum towards the thing that it is that you. I think you also need to be careful with how much desire you have too, because I think that desire is one of those things that has a lot of expectations attached to it. And so you probably need desires that are fairly close, that are things that are like, I'm going to start jujitsu is different than I'm going to win a national championship. Mm-hmm. You don't think about winning the national championship until you look around the room and you say, I could be like some of these other, like that guy's a black belt and he did really good at nationals. I bet I could be. I'm a little more athletic. I'm a little younger. I'm a little stronger, right? Once you you kind of need to be something first before you recognize that you're that much closer to the goal.
And I would assume the answer is like just start, but in Nsima, like how did you not get what people call like analysis paralysis? Like how did you not look at how good the guys were at Casio's and be like, oh man, there's nobody as big as me, but everyone's smaller and they can kick my ass right now. How did you kind of like avoid getting that feeling of like just basically just doubt and just actually go in there and start working?
I mean, that feeling's okay though. I think that's like one of the problems, that when people feel that way, they don't think it's okay to feel that way. It's okay to look at something, look at a sport you're about to do and see that it's going to be very, very difficult, but just, get in and start doing it. It's okay to look at, your weight loss journey or the amount of fat you have to lose and be like, God dang, this is going to take a while. I'm 200 pounds overweight. This is going to be a lot of work, but then you just have to start. Like you're inevitably going to notice that it's a mountain that you're going to have to climb. Like you can't dodge that mountain. You can't, you can't just go around it or barrel a hole through it. You have to actually climb it. But I think that knowing that is okay, but then it's just literally making the next move. Like with jiu-jitsu, I saw the class and I signed up that day without giving myself much time to talk myself out of it. I don't think I would have talked myself out of it because I saw it and I thought it was really cool. I also thought it was really confusing. But to make sure that I would follow through, I just signed up right there and then to get started, So I think, one of those things and one of those ways is make a moving in that direction as fast as possible, whatever that move might be. With it, if it's your diet, right, and you're thinking about it, then make a move to just throw out things out of your house, put in a bag, put in your trash can, so that so that you already have a way to move in that direction.
Yeah, and maybe even to add to that, just shop. and buy some good foods. Now you got good food. That's maybe the equivalent of like signing up. Like, I think signing up is great. Like, can you sign up at a gym? Can you sign up for a bodybuilding show or a powerlifting meet, if you're already into lifting and stuff? I think those are things that they're difficult to commit to. You get super nervous when you think about like what you're going to look like or how you're going to perform when you get when you get on stage or whatever. But I think kind of putting your ass on the line is a really important aspect of all this.
Yeah, totally. And even just like recently when I started, tracking everything again and making sure that I'm getting the most bang for my caloric buck, like looking at like even just like flatbread, I'll be in the store and I'll turn all the labels around. I'm like, oh, this one has 120 calories per serving. This one has, at first I was like, is anybody like, are people looking at me look at all these labels? Because I started thinking people are like, oh, why is this guy even bothering? Like, I got all these weird thoughts in my head, and it's like, dude, nobody cares because they're all just trying to get around me to get, whatever the hell bread that they want, right? So, yeah, along the lines of what you guys are saying, like just signing up, going to shop, I think that's pretty good. That's a good way to start.
No, and another thing is like making those right decisions. People feel that it should be super easy to make those right decisions, or like if they're dieting to make the right decision in terms of food all the time. Like you do it once, it was kind of weird, kind of difficult. You didn't like it that much. You did it a few more times, then you cheated or whatever on your diet for 2 days, right? And they feel like, wow, well, since I cheated, it shows that this isn't going to work for me. It's too hard. Let me just figure out something else. But if you cheated, just go back and try doing that same thing you were doing before, but just make the decision again and again and again. Because the more and more and more you make the decision to do that thing, the easier it gets to do it. It's like, again, when it came to just first starting out in jiu-jitsu, I went a little bit too hard, too fast. I tried training 4 days a week. Then there was certain weeks I had to take off because I was too sore. I was like, dang, I don't know if I can manage this with lifting. But then I just went back, went a few more times, went 2 times that week, 3 times that week. And it just got easier to stick to it, even though there was a lot of it didn't make sense. I was getting beat up, and it was something that was new. But by doing it and repeating it more and more and more, it became just much easier and much more natural to just step in and do. I didn't have to think about it as much.
I would say ask questions, ask good questions. I'm sure when you get into jiu-jitsu, people have all this language and you're like, oh shit, like I don't know. Rather than just feeling like you're dumb, say, hey, like what's a triangle? Hey, you guys keep saying guard, passing the guard, and all this different stuff about a guard. And like, I just don't know. Sorry, but I don't know what that means, Mm-hmm. And they'll say, oh, well, the guard is this, and it's the basis of kind of all jiu-jitsu and or whatever it is that they say. And then at least like you just, you're going to kind of feel foolish. But that kind of stuff happens to me quite a bit. Like if I'm in like a business meeting or something, people are always throwing around, these technical words and stuff. And I don't know what half of them mean all the time. So I'll say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not sure what that is. And then they say it. And then, if it seems like it's important enough to me, I'll remember it. I'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, okay. Now and when they talk about it again, I learned what they're talking about. And now my learning will continue to progress. So I think you want to have an effort to where all this stuff over a period of time just gets to be way easier, because then it doesn't really feel like discipline. Somebody else might look at you and go, oh my God, you're so disciplined. And you're like, well, this is just kind of me. This is the way that I like to live my life. These are things I integrated over a long period of time. I went and worked out 2 days ago, and this guy that I've seen him probably about 3 times now. Every time I see him, he's dropped some weight. He was very, very heavy, and I think so far he's lost about 60 pounds. Like last time I saw him, he was down like 20 pounds, and this time I saw him again, he's down another 20 pounds. And I said, hey, man, that's, great. Next time I see you, you'll probably be down even more pounds. He goes, for me, it's not about pounds, it's about ounces. He's like, I can lose ounces. He's like, and the pounds will follow. And so if you can break things down like that, I mean, if I asked anybody on the street, hey, you think you could lose a couple ounces? Like they would say, yeah, by when? Like, could you lose 10 ounces? Can you lose, 16 ounces, I guess would be a pound. So can you lose 8 ounces today and maybe lose 8 ounces tomorrow? And then you're down a pound, and you break these things down in these smaller things. They don't seem like such a giant, like you said earlier, mountain to climb.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Andrew.
No, I was just going to say, like, that's what I recommend people do all the time. I'll get asked for, any kind of diet, like advice or whatever. And like, I just can't do it for X amount of time. I'm like, can you change one meal today to be like a high volume, low calorie meal? It's like, yeah, I can probably do it once today. I'm like, so you can have a gigantic salad, throw some protein in there, maybe some zero calorie dressings or something, or maybe no dressing. Can you do one of those today? Yeah. Okay. So then you can do it. You're looking at it the wrong way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And to go back to the thing about questions, man, I heard this story from Cassio about Uriah Faber, when he went into Cassio's gym initially to start learning how to train jiu-jitsu. And he's never done jiu-jitsu before that. But at that point, he was already, super successful wrestler. He was already a pretty successful fighter at that point. And as he was learning jiu-jitsu, he was the guy in the class that would be asking the most questions. The guy that probably had the most martial arts knowledge in other martial arts was the guy that was asking the most questions. And I think one thing to take away from that is like, it seems to me that sometimes people are afraid of not like looking like they don't know. They're afraid of asking a question, people thinking they're stupid or whatever. But that's absolutely necessary. Like, I honestly don't care about asking something and everyone thinking, well, that's so simple, you should know that, or being the only person to ask a certain thing. Because what you'll notice is that if you're in one of those classes and you ask a question, there were 8 other people that wanted to ask that same question, because after it's explained, people are like, yeah, I get it now, right? So that's one thing that's super important. If you don't understand something with your diet and you're working with somebody, ask them that question. I've had situations where people were legit scared of asking me because they're like, I should know this. This should be simple. I don't want to waste his time. Like, if I waste his time, but the thing is like, I'm here to answer your questions. That's why you hired me, right? So asking questions, searching it out, there should be absolutely no shame in not knowing, because if you knew, you wouldn't be in the situation you're currently in.
Yeah, and it could be really helpful. I mean, if you tell me, to cut back on carbs, and you give me like some carbs that I can eat, and then you tell me some proteins I can eat, some fats I can eat, and we go over this whole thing. And now I'm, at a restaurant, I'm like, oh, I usually get it like a Coke, now what do I get? And then I need to know, like, can I have a Diet Coke? Can I have an iced tea? Like, what's okay in these situations? Like, what should I be doing? And in a lot of the stuff from the old Eastern Bloc strength training, the Russians, they did a lot of they tested every possible scenario that you can think of like how people reacted to certain stimulus, how they reacted to certain types of training, how they reacted to certain types of coaches. And one thing that they found was that the principle of awareness was critical. So you need to know, and everyone's a little different on some of this stuff, but the more that you know about why you're doing something, the better that they would perform time and time again. So when you knew why you might need to, drive your head forward when you're doing a snatch or doing a clean or whatever it might be, or press the elbows out and up on a movement. If you knew that was so that you could lock out faster or lock out harder, you'd be more likely to execute it, be more likely to do it. And then you're also starting to kind of follow a procedure, which is really important towards wanting to get towards your goals. So being aware of what you're doing is huge, and asking questions and not being afraid to ask those questions, which sounds so silly sometimes, it sounds, asking somebody, oh, why are we doing a curl that way? No one's going to be, unless someone is totally kidding with you, they're not going to be like, oh, you asshole, it's to build our biceps, you know. They're probably going to say, oh, well, because, you know, when your wrist is cocked back and you go to do a curl, it takes away some of the stress from the forearm and it puts a little bit more tension on the bicep type thing. And so you want to try to, as much as possible, be a student for life, pretend that you don't know anything and you don't know what's going on. And I think the more that you do that, the faster you can advance. And you want to continue to try to ask better questions. Maybe your questions in the beginning aren't great, but as you go along, they'll be more and more advanced because you're going to continue to gain more knowledge. But if you don't ask those questions in the first place, your questions can't even get any better.
Yeah, and who doesn't like being a guiding light? So when you ask somebody a question and they have the answer, kind of makes them feel good too, right? Like
makes them feel amazing.
Yeah, because they're like, oh, I know everything. And then Mark, like your diet has, I don't want to say it's completely changed, but I don't remember any time where you were talking about fiber and like using that as a tool to stay more full. You know, it was always the war on carbs, and then now you're implementing a little bit more carbs. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you're doing?
I still probably don't eat that much fiber, but there's been a little bit more veggies in the diet. Some of that has to just do with Todd Abrams. He gets me some of his stuff from Icon Meals, and they just happen to come with some vegetables, so I'll eat them. But vegetables are great because they can help fill you up, and they are. They're high in they're high in fiber, especially green vegetables, and they're just low in energy. Like you don't really get a lot of energy from vegetables typically, depending on the vegetable. I think a potato might be like a vegetable, or I forget. But anyway, there's not a lot of energy in them necessarily. You know, you would get more energy out of eating rice or something like that, or you get more energy out of eating like a ribeye because it has a lot of fat in it, right? So vegetables are great because they can provide volume to your stomach. They can also assist with digestion for some people. For some people, they can be problematic. But vegetables and protein I view as being very, very similar in the sense that they're not great energy sources. It's almost as if they don't count against your caloric load at all. But protein, you know, it would be debatable on whether protein is like, you know, 1 calorie per gram, or maybe even 2, or maybe even half a calorie or something like that. I don't really know. But the science does show that I think it's 3 or 4 times. It takes 3 or 4 times the amount of energy just to digest protein in the first place. So protein, in the end, it doesn't cost you energy because it is providing you some value, but it's high in nutrient. It's high in nutrition, but not high in energy. And people have energy toxicity. They eat too much energy. They consume too much energy. And so how do we figure out ways to drive down the overall amount of energy that people eat? If I was to give you a thing of ground beef with maybe some onions and peppers and salt and pepper on it, something like that, and it was 80-20 beef, right? Let's say it was 1,000. Say it's like 1,000 calories worth, right? That'd be a pretty good amount, right? And I know this would taste immensely different, but if we had just ground turkey instead, 1,000 calories of ground turkey is going to it's probably going to be a whole packet. You know, those packets that you get that weigh like 2 pounds or so.
Yeah.
That would be, if you could eat that, you're a stud. That would be really, really difficult to eat. And also protein is the most satiating as well. And those kinds of protein, those lean proteins, are also dry. So they're very difficult to get through. And then, so how do we easily incorporate something like that? Well, maybe you just start out with leaner beef. You get like Piedmontese ground beef that's like 96% lean, or you maybe mix some ground beef with some turkey. Now you have something that has some moisture to it, has some fat to it, but it doesn't have a lot of fat to it. You probably cut the amount of, you're probably eating a similar amount of volume, but you probably cut the calories down. And so what I've been doing is a lot of just protein leveraging, trying to keep my protein really, really high. Just a simple example of this was yesterday. We went out for a drive and we went to get like oysters and mussels and stuff like that. And I just didn't know how long we were going to be gone for, because I know that they like to kind of hang out, and my relatives and my wife, they like to have a couple drinks and stuff like that. And I'm not really messing with any of that. So I don't want to be miserable. So I ate a chicken breast. I'm like eating it in the car, while I'm driving. Mm-hmm. And it was just so that I'm not like delirious, so I'm not like focused in on like, oh, I should just get like an appetizer, or I should just get this or that. I occupied my time and my mind with that chicken breast. And then when we sat down to eat, I just drank some water, and it was nothing. It was a situation that I was able to kind of pull myself out of. So I actually think that protein leveraging and utilizing some of these techniques, I think, can really save a lot of people. I really do. I think it can help a lot of people, because I think that maybe people just don't have this knowledge. They don't understand how easy it is to go over the amount of energy that your body actually needs every day. But it can also be super difficult if you lean into eating more protein and eating more fiber.
Nsima, I've been wanting to ask you about this in regards to what Mark just said about protein maybe not having the same amount of like it's supposed to have 4 calories per gram. Not necessarily ignoring that, but if I'm tracking the traditional, 4 calories per gram, is it healthy to just go off of that because that's what we know? And therefore, at the end of the day, if they don't equate to all 4 calories, I'm just in a bigger deficit than what my macros actually tell me.
So the thing is, and it's funny because I wouldn't ever tell somebody that a gram of protein isn't 4 calories. I never say that. But when people overeat protein, like, okay, let's say 2 situations, 2,000 calories. One individual eats like 150 grams of protein and then carbs and fat to hit 2,000 calories. Another person eats 230 grams of protein and then uses carbs and fat to fill in to get to 2,000 calories. The person that was eating more protein is going to have that'll have a better effect on their body composition, meaning the amount of fat and muscle that they hold, than the person that was eating less protein. The person that was eating less protein might tend to hold a little bit more body fat, might not hold on as much muscle, even if they're trying to gain or lose. So we know that the more protein you have in your diet, the more benefits it'll have to you maintaining muscle, to you gaining muscle. If you're cutting, to you keeping muscle as you're cutting. And if you go over your calories, right, let's say that you're supposed to hit 2,000 calories, but you hit 2,200, and that the extra 200 calories was from protein, it's still surplus, and it will have an effect on the amount of weight you lose, right? But it won't be as negative, or won't have as negative effect as if you had 200 extra calories from fat or 200 extra calories from carbs. So I would say that, it's not as risky. It's not as detrimental. But if you're trying to stick to a certain amount of calories because you're dropping a certain way, it's not something that you want to always be like, I can go over on protein. It's okay if I eat like 200 more calories of protein. It's just protein, because that's still like there's still the aspect of gluconeogenesis or whatever. So it'll still be shuttled, right? Just something you want to think about.
It's still, when you eat more protein, I would say the biggest problem wouldn't necessarily be the gluconeogenesis. I think the main problem would just be that you're most likely to get something else with that, because it's hard to,
True.
It's kind of hard to just separate out protein 100%. But if you could, what's been recommended to me before is like, eat like tilapia or eat egg whites, and if you feel like you're still hungry at the end of the day, eat 8 egg whites or 10 egg whites or something like that, which can be really difficult to do. And I don't like tilapia, so it's kind of gross. But if I was actually very hungry, maybe I would make the decision to eat it. In your example, there's something else to keep in mind, is that calories can be off by quite a bit, in terms of the labels and so forth. And it would, I would imagine that a New York strip from one company versus a New York strip from another company, as we see again with Piedmontese, like how much leaner is that Piedmontese New York strip versus one that you're getting in a restaurant that they're dumping a bunch of oil on. So sometimes it's hard to equate for some of that, but the difference in calories of 230 grams of protein versus 150 grams of protein is only 320 grams. So if you were to overeat on protein, like if you were to eat, let's just say in that case, it's more than 50 grams, but 50 grams of protein is probably like maybe 2 good sized chicken breasts or one, maybe 1.5, depending on how big the chicken breast is. That's a good amount of food, So if you were to think, okay, anytime I'm in a jam and anytime I just get really hungry, I'm going to eat about 40 or 50 grams extra of protein. Well, 50 grams extra of protein would only equate to like 200 grams. And then everybody already knows that calories are massively off due to the food labels can be off quite a bit. And then just our own tracking from time to time can get thrown off. Maybe there was, maybe somebody gave you a Coke instead of a Diet Coke when you went through a drive-through or something like that. I mean, there's always going to be some fallibility with it. And I would think that, 100 calories, 200 calories is not going to probably be detrimental. But almost all the evidence, and you never want to go based off of one person's research or one person's information. But even when you listen to Lane Norton, he does talk a lot about, hey, when protein's equated for, calories always matter, and then it's like, well, what does that mean? He'll say fiber. Protein and fiber. When protein and fiber are equated for, it always comes down to calories. You have to be in a caloric deficit.
Meaning that you need to get enough protein, right?
Correct. Yeah. And also, I think that a lot of research will also show that when you go 5%, 10%, 15% above what you may need from a protein perspective. So let's just say you went from eating your body weight in grams of protein you weigh 200 pounds, you have 200 grams of protein. If you increase that by 10%, 15%, and so forth, there hasn't been an increase in body weight gain. Again, you would have to make sure that if you're to try some of these tricks and try some of these things, that you're only mainly getting protein and that you're not going over on something. You're not dumping barbecue sauce on your chicken breast, or you're not having a chicken thigh and counting as a chicken breast or something like that. So you still want to, be precise, and you still want to really pay attention to it. But if you're going to overeat on anything, go ahead and overeat on some greens. Again, making sure there's not tons of dressing on there and things like that, or overeat on protein. But the real message of all this is, in the long run, you won't have a problem with overeating at all anyway. Especially when you start to incorporate a little bit of intermittent fasting, I think can go a long way. And when I say a little bit, I mean, maybe you just push your breakfast back by 2 hours at first, and then you can start to getting into a tougher discipline at some other time. But when you start to do that, when you start to when you eat protein every single day at a large amount, it's kind of a job, You start eating 200, 250, 300 grams of protein every day, your hunger will be driven down over a period of time.
Mm-hmm. Just to I don't know, maybe spark up little argument. If the food labels are inaccurate, what can somebody do who's like fairly new? What can somebody do to make sure that they are staying within a caloric deficit, or, just staying on track? If like, oh, well, this label is not correct, maybe I can eat a little bit more. Obviously that's definitely the wrong way to go. But can they just do their best and then follow the scale and go off of that? Or is there something better that they can do?
Well, somebody just needs to tweak. So you just need to kind of tweak your own caloric demand for yourself. So you might, you might try to eat 2,000 calories a day for a while, and then it's not working. Well, a way to see that it's not working is to weigh yourself, right? So when you weigh yourself, you're like, well, something's off. Could be something that you order from a restaurant, or could be something somewhere. Then you're going to have to tweak it and adjust, moving it downward. Just because, I personally think that the way that we came up with calories, I think the whole thing is fucked. Personally, like I don't like the way that we like light something on fire in a box and then equate it. I know we have different measures of it now. Things have gotten a little more advanced, and then we're just like, yeah, that's probably the way it works in your body. Like for me personally, I can't grasp that, and I can't even possibly fathom that it would be similar for people. So, from one person to another, I would imagine that I assimilate fat, protein, and carbohydrates slightly differently than you guys, but it's probably very marginal. But just because I don't like the concept doesn't mean that it can't be effective. It's the only measure that we have. We don't have any other way to like track it. So I would say that you would still want to track it, and you still want to pay attention to it. Just because the food labels might not be super accurate all the time doesn't mean you just dismiss the whole thing. Mm-hmm. I also recognize that tracking calories works. So regardless of my own belief or my own feelings towards it, that doesn't really matter. Like, can it assist somebody? Yeah, certainly. It assists a lot of people. And I would even go as far to say the people that are in the best shape in the world, a lot of them track. That doesn't mean necessarily that it's the greatest method ever either, but there's a lot of empirical evidence. You look at guys like Mike O'Hearn and a lot of these guys that are stepping on stage. I think it would probably be, you would find a few people that are pros that maybe don't track, but I think it would be really, really rare. Professional bodybuilders or professional fitness people. So tracking, it is effective, and it does work really well. I just think it's good to know that the food labels can be messed up, and then that way you can adjust accordingly. But most of the things that are packaged and most of the things that have food labels are things that you really shouldn't be eating anyway. And for example, when you go to buy a stalk of corn, or you go to buy vegetables, they're not packaged anything. There's no food label to them. When you go to buy meat at the store, kind of now they're shrink wrapped, but you get stuff from a butcher and there's no label on it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to bring up a tip that I got from our boy Scott from Carnivore Cast. I was on his podcast, and I was just telling him, like, dude, like, yeah, I haven't had ground beef in forever because it's so fat. Like, there's so much fat content in there. And he's like, well, depending on what you make, you can really cut what the label says in half because you cook off the fat. And I'm like, Nsima, can I do this? And he's like, well, I was on a cut. So he's like, let's just stick with what the labels say. Like, let's not go, too crazy. But when I heard that, I'm like, damn, so you're telling me, this 96.4 is actually 98.2. And I'm like, oh, we might have some fun this weekend. So, just little things like that, right? Like, the labels do the best that they can, and that's what we have. But
right.
It's not going to be to a T exactly what we're getting out of it.
One thing to think about is that it's definitely like when you're tracking something and you say it's 2,200 calories, it could have been 2,270, it could have been 2,310, But the thing is, it's like if you're keeping your food relatively consistent, not meaning that you're eating actually, if you don't have 30, 40 different food variables coming into your diet at any given time, then it's very easy to make change off of that wrong variable. Just like when people are tracking the amount of calories that they burn on a treadmill, but we know it's wrong. We know that, the treadmill is saying you're burning 400 calories. That might not be 400. But if that's the measurement you go off of, and you make changes to that over time, you're like, okay, let me just bump this up to 800 calories on this treadmill and 1,000 calories on this treadmill. Then you're still going to be seeing change in the direction you want to go to, even though the measurement isn't perfect. So it's that's something to think about. Even though it's wrong, we can take out those variables. And then another thing to try and do is I think this especially applies to fatty cuts of meat from butchers or from places like Costco. If you're dieting, it's a good idea to overestimate the typical amount of fat that's on that meat. So MyFitnessPal may say that like 4 ounces has X amount of protein and X amount of fat, right? It might be a good idea to add in maybe 5 to 8 more grams of fat on top of that measurement, especially if you see that it's super marbled. You want to add in some extra fat on top of what the tracker says, just because like you're probably getting in some extra anyway. And it just shows how much wrong this can be. And it also shows why bodybuilders tend to eat chicken breast, tilapia, very lean cuts of meat, because it takes out the variables of having different amounts of fat marbling on all these different cuts of meat.
Also, there's reasons why bodybuilders don't eat like protein bars and stuff like that as they're prepping for a show. Those are things you're going to want to be really cautious of, because why in the world would a company that has like 50% play with their food label, why wouldn't they say they only have 8 grams of fat when they can say that rather than saying they got 12? So that's something to really pay attention to. If your protein bar says, 200 calories, I would just maybe slap another 20 to 50 calories on there at least, just so you have that safety net. And you'll know, like if you're really getting really wild with these estimations and your calories are super low, you'll feel it. Mm-hmm. You'll feel it. You'll know that you needed to bring them back up. And I think that's something that can't escape you. You can't, it's great to develop these disciplines and it's great to integrate these things, but you don't want to be too crazy about it, because you don't want to end up with kind of like an eating disorder. You don't want to think like, oh, I can't have that. I can't. I think I think it's healthier. I love some of the principles of flexible dieting. I love the idea of, you can eat anything as long as you pay attention to what you're eating. As long as you track it, then you can eat anything. I like some of that idea. I like some of that concept. And I think that a lot of times we get so caught up in it that we're thinking, oh, these carbs are going to make me fat. Or if I eat this extra fat, I heard that dietary fat, can lead to accumulation of body fat easier than anything else. So every single thing that I eat can't have any fat in it. Well, if you start to cut your fat way down, you're going to start to have hormonal issues. Your performance in the gym's not going to be good. Your performance in the bedroom's going to suck. Mm-hmm. You're really falling apart, and you might have developed a nice 6-pack, but you're kind of falling apart from the inside out. So I think you need to just try to have a healthy understanding of that you need to get really good, solid nutrition every single day.
Yeah, and as you guys know, and everyone listening, I'm still fairly early in this fitness journey, and that's my problem right now, is getting in enough fat. Because I look at the fat and I'm like, oh man, that's going to be 9 calories, and then like I don't want to eat certain foods, and then at the end of the day, I'm like, dude, I still need 20 to 30 grams of fat before I even hit 15 grams. And I talked to Nsima about it, and he's like, dude, we got to get your fat up. And yeah, this whole week has been tough. I've been tired. I haven't been have too much drive to get up. I still do it, but man, I can feel a difference.
What kind of stuff have you been eating? What kind of stuff are you like cooking?
So again, like I've given a huge shout out plenty of times on the podcast, but I eat a lot of stuff from Remington James' cookbook. So a lot of high protein, moderate to high carb, low fat foods. So like the French toast that I'm going to have today has, I believe, something like 50 grams of protein. I'll have to check the carbs, but only like 8 grams of fat, and so that meal right there it's close to 400 calories, or if it might be a little bit over. So in a day where I'm going to have 1,800 calories, that takes out a decent chunk.
So here's a really easy tip for you. So cooking French toast requires your pan to not get sticky.
Correct.
So what I would say is maybe take about a piece or 2 of bacon, cut them in half, and for every piece of French toast that you use, put down half a slice of bacon to get some fat in the pan. Your fucking French toast will taste amazing. The bacon will taste amazing, and you'll have, I mean, how much grams of fat is in like a piece of bacon or two? You know, it's very, very, it's very modest, you know, and like, I would say fuck using these sprays and stuff. They all have calories in them anyway. Those things are just a total scam. Take butter and just, you know, if you don't want to do the bacon trick, take butter and just lube up the thing with butter. Butter per serving has like, 5 grams of fat or something. So if you do that 2-3 times a day, then you're meeting your fat requirements. Olive oil and stuff like that works pretty good, but I'd rather have the taste and the flavor of some bacon in there.
Yep.
I do that all the time with my kids' eggs and stuff. They're always like, your eggs taste so much better than everybody else's eggs. And it's like this little trick like that, adds some salt and adds some fat to it. And that might be a good thing for you to give a try to.
Yeah. And like I said, still learning. So these are just some of the bumps in the road that I've been experiencing. So it's cool to, share it on a platform like this. But yeah, I have thought about using butters, but again, it just goes back to like, oh, but then how am I going to track X amount? Like, is it one serving for the whole thing? Like, but then again, if I'll do the spray and, it's like, how many seconds was that? Was that 2 whole seconds? I haven't gotten that crazy, but like, yeah. I kind of play with myself, like in my head, I pretend to be.
I bet you play with yourself.
Yes, buddy. Mm-hmm. I'll pretend to be like the crazy neurotic, like real, like down to the T number of like calories. And then I'm like, okay, don't be that guy. But do I want to be more that guy or this other guy that's just throwing butter in everything, So I have to find the right balance. And then again, so like the scale has, I've only gained 2 full pounds since the photo shoot that happened. That was this week, right? I believe it was this week. So, kind of letting loose on the diet. I haven't gained much of anything. So I think I have a little bit of wiggle room there, more than I thought. Talking to Nsima, I'm like, hey, if I was on this many calories for this whole cut, does that mean this many calories would be maintenance and this is a surplus? And in his opinion, I was pretty close, but obviously we're gonna mess with it and see exactly what happens in about a week or 2.
Yeah, I think one big thing is remembering that right now, the reason you're tracking is ideally, like some people track all the time. Some people are going to track forever. But I think the goal is to get to a point where you're not tracking anything. You know what I mean? Because I remember there was a time that I used to use those sprays and I used to like, I was the same way. Like I was having problems hitting 50 or 60, not 50, 60 grams of fat. I was actually like, at the end of the day, I had like 15 grams of fat left. I was like, dang, because my diet was kind of similar to the stuff that you're doing right now. I was trying to have a lot of fun with my carbs, pancakes, etc. I'm happy I don't do that anymore. But again, the whole reason you're using some tracking right now is so that you can just find a way to get out of that when you're not dieting. I think, for some people, when they're trying to get to their goal body, there is some anxiety in not knowing exactly how much is like tracking exactly what's going into their body while they're trying to cut down. It's very possible to do it without tracking anything by just having structured meals. Like you have this meal this time, this meal this time, and then over time you take away a cup of rice or you take away some of the fat you use in some of your food and you slowly trickle it down. You can do it that way. But if you track it, it can make it easier in terms of trending downwards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think my issue, sorry, Mark, like today I'm going to hang out with family. It's Papa Zaragoza's birthday. I think he's like 70. So happy birthday, Dad.
Damn, bro.
Yeah, I know. Right. So when I do that and I'm not going to track my mom texts me, she's like, hey, what can you eat? And so I'm like, just make chicken and I'll figure it out from there. But what I'll end up doing is like, oh shit, dude, like my mom's rice is like better than anything on the planet. Like I'm going to have some. So what I'll end up doing, which is a huge mistake in my opinion, is I'll overestimate everything and I'll undereat. And then when I get home, I'm like, dude, I'm pretty like, I'm ravenously hungry. And thankfully I have some good control to where I don't start like dipping into the peanut butter, or like, I don't go for sweets, but I will undereat. And that's not a good place to be, because then the next day I wake up feeling terrible. And then I'll probably end up eating, either over my calories, or I just won't perform well.
What time's the party, by the way?
It's supposed to be at 12, but
12?
I'm always late. Like, so
Okay.
I'll be late.
I was just curious. Did you eat this morning?
Yeah. I'm trying to I'm trying out what it's like to not fast on the weekends, just to see how I feel. So I just had a gigantic shake this morning.
Okay. Yeah. It's funny. I think there's like, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say 325 calories, if anyone's wondering.
I think it's funny. There's like there's two ways of approaching parties. I think Mark has mentioned protein leveraging, and like you just did, you ate a big old chicken breast before you went out with your family so you could abstain. And I'm more in the party of I'm gonna fast the fuck. I'm gonna fast for a few hours before that. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna enjoy some food. I'm not gonna eat like an asshole, but I'm gonna enjoy some food. So it's funny how like there's two ways of it, I guess, attaining the same thing, being satiated so that you don't eat, or being fast enough so that if you eat, it's not, you don't go crazy. But
well, imagine if the party that you went to was kind of the only food you ate for the day, or you were like, if I'm still hungry later today, I'll just eat a steak. And it's like, whatever you did at the party, like, hopefully you didn't go too crazy, but you maybe did enjoy a couple things from Mama. I used to eat a little bit similar to Andrew too. I found a diet by Dr. Barry Sears called the Zone Diet, like a long time ago. And at the time, all I kind of knew was, I just knew a little bit about like bodybuilding diets, but whenever I would read about a bodybuilding diet, I was always like, there's just no fat in these diets. Like, they're not fun. I would try them, and I was young. So, and I wasn't a bodybuilder. I was a power lifter. And so I'd eat like chicken and rice for a few days in a row, and I just didn't dig it. And so that's when I started getting rid of carbs and so on. Then I heard about the Zone Diet, and I was like, oh, that sounds pretty reasonable. You have a moderate amount of fat and a moderate amount of carbs, and you have a good amount of protein. I'm like, I'll try that. And so I used to track a lot of stuff, and I used to pay attention to a lot of stuff. And I was like, this tortilla has this amount of carbs. And just for me personally, I kind of found it was enjoyable. I did like the foods that I ate pancakes. I'd eat French toast that had like more egg whites in it, and, some sort of weird grain fancy toast or whatever. But, I did that for a while, and I just, I reverted back to just eating like meat, because like eating meat was just, it was easier for me in a way, and it took a lot less time consuming. And I was like, I don't really like tracking. I don't like weighing stuff. I do have a decent idea of like approximately how much energy, how many calories are in some of these things. And I'm just not going to really sweat it anymore. So I went back to kind of eating the way that I did. I find it interesting though, that a lot of people will say, oh, the way that Andrew's eating is not sustainable because he's got to count everything, and he needs a food label for everything, or he's got to go on MyFitnessPal, or someone will say keto is not sustainable, or carnivore is not sustainable, or being vegan is not sustainable. And it's like, I don't know why we pass that judgment on to other people. Because if they're interested in it and they like it and they think it's dope and they think it's fun, they're going to fucking continue to do it. They'll continue, when you think about, someone like Cam Hanes, he runs a marathon.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah.
For lunch, like that's
sustainable.
That's what he eats for lunch, is a marathon. He goes and runs a fucking marathon. So like, you can't really just pass that judgment on to other people. Oh, doing jujitsu for 4 or 5 hours a day is not sustainable. It's like, well, yeah, it's not sustainable to you, but I enjoy it so much. Going to the gym for 2 hours, not sustainable, or powerlifting is not sustainable. I've been powerlifting since I was 12. I still do the movements. I'm not as strong as I used to be, but I'm still doing it 31 years later, And so I don't really like when people when people make those statements. But I think what ultimately you're trying to do is you're trying to make things simpler for yourself over a long period of time. So I put together this thing the other day. I actually posted it on IG, and it's a picture, and then it has some dialogue to it. Maybe Andrew, you can share the link on this podcast. But basically, I kind of just went over all these different things that you can do that I view as being very, very simple things to implement. Some of them are harder than others, like lifting. For some people that don't enjoy lifting, that would kind of be a tough thing, or cardio, vascular training. Some people don't really enjoy that, but I'll give them to you right here. So to help keep your calories low to moderate, you want to occupy your mind. Like, what hobbies are you into? What do you enjoy doing? What's something that can pass the time for you? Do you like to play cards? Do you like to do puzzles? Do you like to write? Do you like to read? Do you like to create music? Do you like to create YouTube content? Anything, whatever it is. What is something that you enjoy doing that can occupy your mind, take up some time? And also, maybe it's something that is thoughtful towards you making progress as a human being.
Yeah.
Intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting. I don't, unless you have maybe type 1 diabetes, or there could be some circumstances where you wouldn't be able to intermittent fast. But for the most part, I think everyone can utilize a little bit of fasting, since a lot of human beings sleep for 7 to 9 hours a day, and they have fasting through the night. So can you implement some intermittent fasting? Double bicep. Bring it into a double bicep. Bring them up. There we go. 22 inch guns. After intermittent fasting, we got walking. Any of these things, if you can keep some of these things in your life for as long as you possibly can. Like, I've been walking for the last 7 years, and there's almost always at least one walk every single day. So if you can implement something like that, maybe you don't like walking. Maybe you enjoy riding a bike. Maybe you enjoy going on a skateboard. Maybe you like roller skates, but find something. Cardiovascular training. This is just purely going on some sort of, cardio mission where your heart rate is above 125 for 20, 30 minutes. I think most human beings are capable of doing something that is of that nature. Maybe that's a hike. Again, you could find, maybe you like to play tennis, or maybe you like to, do a sport that would keep your heart rate elevated for that length of time, or just get on some sort of machine at the gym. Lifting, is obviously huge, because we need to gaining muscle, having muscle, maintaining muscle as we get older, will be really advantageous towards you being able to burn calories, for you to help regulate your blood sugar, for you to stay strong going into being older. Protein leveraging, trying to up your protein percentage. So protein leveraging isn't necessarily about eating 400 grams of protein. It's about having a higher percentage of protein. So, because if you eat 400 grams of protein and 400 grams of fat, then you might have missed, you might have kind of missed, why we're doing it. Because if you ate 400 grams of protein, 400 grams of fat, and 200 grams of carbs, you possibly overate and ended up in the same category as everybody else, where you're probably just going to get fatter. So just increasing the overall protein percentage that you're eating. If I was to estimate where mine's at, it's probably more like 50 or 60%. But if you can get to about 30%, I think that would be reasonable. Eat fiber. Everyone, I think, can eat fiber. Gum, I think chewing gum is sometimes like a little distraction away from eating, because you got something else in your mouth that's not food. So if you get in your car and you have a tendency to want to eat in your car, you have a tendency to want to eat when you're in front of a screen, sit down and watch a movie, maybe some chewing gum can help pass the time. Maybe you can get some low-calorie popcorn to pass the time. Might be another trick, because that's going to add fiber to your diet. Fiber also, just back to fiber for a second, will also help keep you full. And then along the line of gum, Andrew's been using gums in his protein shakes to help thicken them up. There's different types of gum that you can get. There's xanthan gum, right? And guar gum, I believe.
Yep, those are the two that are recommended.
Protein shakes, low fat, cottage cheese, low fat yogurt that doesn't have any extra sugar. And then you got diet drinks, bone broth, coffee, tea. And on top of making sure that you're getting in your macronutrients, make sure you're getting in your micronutrients. So I think these are all like those things. Like I do realize that like walking or lifting and cardio and some of the things they have a little bit more difficulty level to them if you don't have a rhythm with them, if you've never done them before. But everything on this list, I think it's a softball. I think it's an underhand pitch. And I think you can hit that bitch out of the park because I think they're so simple that they can be repeatable. And when you find things that are simple and repeatable, they can become part of your habits. And then they become part of your character. Then people are like, oh, there's the motherfucker that lifts all the time. There's the dude who's shredded all the time. There's the guy who's always in good shape. Now when people talk about you, they're not like, oh, I know him. He's the fat guy. Now when people talk about you, or he's the skinny guy. Oh, I know the guy. He's real, real skinny, right? No, you don't want people to say that. You want people to say, that's the guy with the huge triceps, right? That's how you want to be remembered. So I think those are all things that are, and maybe I'm just crazy because I've been doing this for a long time, but I don't think those things are that hard to start to incorporate.
Yeah, no, I agree. The funny thing, though, when you say that is that I can kind of think about, when I was first starting all of this, if you gave me that list, my immediate thing would be like, well, how much of that? And how much of that? How much of that? How many grams of that? How do I calculate? Like I think, what I was thinking about this when one of you guys said something, it's like, I think Andrew, you mentioned something about asking a question and someone being really pumped to answer. Mm-hmm. Well, there are certain situations where I've asked a question. I could tell somebody was frustrated with me because they're like, well, you should just know, that should be understood. But the thing is like if you're in a situation like Mark, and me in this dieting thing, you just understand there's certain things that are kind of second nature at this point. Certain things do seem like they just should. It's really just that simple. But when you don't know much about it, there's like this plethora of things that we don't think matters, but does matter to other people, or they think it matters. You guys get what I'm saying? Yeah,
it can be a block. I don't really know how many times to walk, per day. And so I can just tell people flat out, walk twice a day, lift 3 times a week, do cardio 3 times a week. Those would be places where I would try to start. And if you miss your mark a little bit, it's okay, but mm-hmm. Just strive for that, aim towards that, work your best to get to do that.
Fit it in your life. I think that's one thing where if you just understand that that's what you got to do, things can be a lot simpler, because a lot of people are like, how many days should I lift, or what should my program look like? Or like how much should I walk? Well, how much can you walk? How many days a week can you lift with your job and your responsibilities? How many days can you fit in? Can you fit in 3 days? Can you fit in 4 days of 30 minutes? 30 minutes is okay. It doesn't have to be 90 minutes. Fit in what you can with what you got.
I noticed for me with lifting that, just this idea of just picking one body part has made it really, really simple. And I think maybe if you're to look at stuff from a more factual standpoint, and maybe you don't know the facts, maybe that's part of the problem. But if you just look at resistance training from the perspective of, I just need to figure out a way to overload my muscles for today. It's like, that sounds pretty simple. Like, just imagine if you picked up a set of dumbbells, you pick up 30-pound dumbbells, and you just walk back and forth in your backyard with them. Mm-hmm. Maybe you set a timer on your watch or your phone, and you go for 12 minutes, and you go every minute on the minute, or whatever your body would be able to do. That would be a good form of resistance training. You're carrying some weight. It's in your hands. It's in your forearms. It's in your biceps. It's in your traps. You have your legs moving as you're walking. So there's just a lot of ways to get this stuff done. If you enjoy a lot of movement rather than just lifting, well, maybe you can figure out a way to do some curls, and in between the curls, you can do step ups. In between doing dumbbell bench press, you do some step ups or some lunges. Maybe you do maybe you only like body weight exercise. So you mess with pull ups and push ups back and forth. I think these are all things that are, if you're already into fitness, they're very, very easy to keep hold of. But if you're new to it, it can just be a real uphill battle just to get going on it. I think what people maybe need to know is that all the stuff that people talk about where they say it makes them feel so good, you might not feel that for a while. It might be a while before, it might be weeks, might be months even before you're like, okay, I get it. So that part I think makes things really, really difficult. Even if you go on a walk and you're like, I don't know why I'm walking. Like, this is stupid. my feet hurt, my ankle hurts, my knee hurt, or whatever. And also, like, am I getting that much activity while I'm walking? And it's like, well, not at first, but if you walk every day, you walk 365 days out of the year, or even 80% of that, how many calories are you burning? I mean, I was just thinking about this the other day. We were talking about how much we all love chips and salsa, tortilla chips and salsa, right? And it's like, just imagine if you just never ate them. Like, how many calories would that shave off of your life if you never ate them, or whatever, whatever little thing that you personally like, Doritos or chips, or just imagine if you never had any chips ever in your life.
Yeah.
Like, your life might be more miserable, but, and I'm not proposing to like cut stuff out forever, but what I'm saying is to kind of think about, if I can move around quite a bit, and if I can eat food that is low in nutrients and high in, low in energy and high in nutrients, then I can be fairly full throughout the day. And I can kind of continue to work on incorporating more movement into my life. And over a period of time, I won't be as heavy as I once was.
Yeah. How crazy would it be if, in a year from now, you lose, I don't know, we'll say 5 pounds, and somebody's like, what did you do differently? I just stopped eating chips. What? Like, yeah, it can be that simple, because, yeah.
I had a friend that switched to Truly. He drank a lot of beer. Every time he'd fish, he'd drink beer. And then he switched to Truly. It was like a Truly commercial, And it was really funny, because it's like, yeah, man. He's like, these are, he's like, I get made fun of all the time. He's like, because these might be a little like girly for whatever reason. And he's like, but I switched to that. And he's like, I lost like 15 pounds. And it's great. I mean, sometimes the smallest thing can lead to some big progress.
Yeah. When you had mentioned a while back about like just train one body part, it really helped me out, because I would get stuck in the mindset of like, shit, okay, I have to wake up at like basically 3:00 to do cardio, and then I need enough time to get into the gym, so I'm going to need like an extra 2 hours because I have to get a good training session in. Whereas now it's like, okay, I got like 45. Yep, I can definitely make it. And, I'm just going to blast out like biceps and shoulders or something. Feel good. I got that muscle stimulus that you were talking about, just overloading the muscles. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I've been doing really good at it, because I'm not missing any days anymore because, I don't have enough time to get a good workout. Like, no, now I can just focus on the one body part. And it's always going to be fun, because, when you have a full body workout, you just hate it, because the whole time you're like, I'm like halfway through the warm up and I'm already dead. Whereas now it's like, I'm going to just kill my quads and, do some squats or something. And it's like, you get out of there with a solid pump and you're just like, yeah, let's kill the day now. It's fun. So I appreciate that, little advice there, because it's helped me a lot just in this past month.
That's great.
Yeah. For all of you guys that, you're trying to figure out what to do in the gym, and you're like, you guys are telling me to just, do my arms, but I don't know what to do with my arms. Honestly, there are a lot of really good programs on the internet. There's a lot of like, and that'll lay out everything you need to do every single day of training. 531 is there. There's a bunch of programs on bodybuilding.com that are actually pretty good programs. I know since there's so many options, it can be overwhelming because then you're like, well, which one do I do? Which one do I choose? Honestly, just choose one that looks good to you and just move forward with it. It's really that simple. I mean, it'll have you progressing the same way. I mean, it's just choose one and go.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get into the paralysis by analysis deal here.
Yeah.
You can have a lot of fun with that.
Yeah.
Trying different things, and you can even try markbell.com, free 7-day trial. Yeah. You can try that one for absolutely free. And so this will be out on Monday. So I believe might be tomorrow, sometime this week, we're going to be live with Kelly Surrett on markbell.com. So if you want to check that out, it's like full exclusive content. You're not going to see it anywhere else. Head over to markbell.com, register for your free 7 days, and then you guys will get an awesome webinar live with Kelly Surrett. It's been a lot of fun. We had Ed Cohn on last week, where Jesse Burdick is asking him a bunch of questions. Mark popped in for a second, and we got the most amazing poop story I've ever heard from Ed Cohn. It was insane. If you guys do sign up for the free trial, please check out like all of this stuff, but I'm not sure if it'll even be available yet. Probably not. But yeah, a lot of fun stuff. There's more than just like a training program on there. So I highly recommend you guys poke around a little bit. But just like Nsima said, you're going to learn pretty much everything you need there. And, there's not just like powerlifting, there's bodybuilding. You can actually train with Team Super Training. So there's a lot of different options there to find exactly what fits you.
Hey, go check it out. It's got all my diet info. It's got old workouts. It's got all kinds of stuff. I think something that people need to try to just eradicate from their brain is the can'ts. I think we all have a tendency to say it, and we all we know that we shouldn't be talking in that way. But I think what happens sometimes is, I guess I'll speak for myself, is that I know that I shouldn't have that mindset. I know that I know that can'ts are not great for me to use. But when it comes to certain maybe weaknesses that I have, I will still allow myself to use them, which isn't great. Like I think that you should always try to find a way around the can'ts of life. Maybe you're like not that good at something yet, but that's a different way of wording things. Your language matters. The way that you discuss stuff matters. Like, I'll give you an example. On our website, markbellslingshot.com, instead of it saying outlet, we're changing it to say stuff that we don't make anymore. Right? Like stuff that we're not going to renew, stuff that we're not going to continue to make.
That makes
sense. And now you're like, oh shit, like this is, I like some of these older items, man. These are classic. These are unique. Right? And so it changes the way that you think about it. And so can'ts, and the word hard is something that I try, except for with my penis, the word hard is something that I try to eliminate. Because I don't really think that things are that hard. They have a difficulty level to them. They're new concepts. They're new ideas. Mm-hmm. Imagine if you were going to go into a course of algebra and you haven't looked at math in a long time. Yeah, you can view that as being hard, but just imagine if you had an option to go into this other class and get brought up to speed on stuff. Well, now it sounds a lot less intimidating, and you're like, yeah, I could probably sit in that class and I can learn something. I don't know if I'm going to like understand all of it, but I can learn something. And so I talked about this on my Twitter, and I basically said, just because the effort is exponentially more than you've done before doesn't necessarily make it hard. So just because something takes an extra push, and I have proof of this, it's not hard for other people, like dunking a basketball from the free throw line, that looks like a crazy feat, but there's people who have done it before. right? There's people that can do these things, or even just dunking a basketball, period. It looks to be difficult. It's like, man, you must have a really good strength to body weight ratio. Maybe you need to be tall. It requires a good vertical leap. You need to be athletic. You probably need to be lean, because if you're heavy, then it's probably harder to jump as high and so forth, right? But just because the effort that you have to put in needs to be organized, and just because the effort that you're putting in is more work than you've done before, that doesn't really mean. I think the word hard can be negative. It doesn't have to be a negative word, but I think that a lot of times when we say, oh, but that's really hard, then we're kind of excusing the reason on, okay, well, because it's so hard, we're not going to really mess with it. You know what I mean? You're kind of like dismissing it. And so for myself, I've tried to eliminate that, and I try to break things down into smaller jobs, or break things down into, just like the guy said about ounces. Like, I don't focus on pounds. I lose ounces, and the pounds will follow, because maybe he found it in his own mind. Maybe he made up that that's too difficult for him to lose pounds. And so he chopped it down into smaller pieces and smaller parts.
Yeah. No, that
cool stuff.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One thing that I was going to mention is going back to what we were talking about at the beginning a little bit. In terms of starting something, it might be necessary to, because sometimes it is necessary to go in and be a little bit conservative. So, maybe you should start off with 2 days a week of training in the gym. But I think also for sometimes it is necessary to just, go to the other side, a little bit first, so you can find your way to the middle. I find that maybe working out isn't the side to do that with, but maybe your diet is the side to do that with. Your diet's the place where you don't just take out a few things. You take out a lot of things that aren't serving you right now, that maybe you can't control well. Like, you don't do well with carbohydrates, you go cold turkey off of that for a little bit. And I've always been in favor of, having a little bit here and there, but maybe you just get rid of everything that's a trigger for you. You go hard one way. All right. And you do that for a while so that you can then slowly bring yourself back to the middle. Sometimes it's okay to do that, and sometimes it's necessary, because I always mention, it's a good idea to ease yourself into things, but it is sometimes a really good idea to go all to the left side and come back. Like with alcohol, that's something else. If you find that you're drinking too much, you could do the Truly thing like this guy did. He lost 15 pounds. That's pretty amazing. But maybe you just stop drinking for a few weeks. Maybe you're noticing that when you drink, you don't make great decisions. It causes you to overeat. It causes you to feel like crap for a few days. Maybe you just don't drink anymore for a while. And then later on, you can then decide, is this a good thing for me to bring back? Sometimes it's necessary and even easier to do that than trying to do little things here and there and dip your toe in. Sometimes you just got to jump.
Yeah, I think so. And I think with fasting is a good example, because it's the rules are very clear. Like, I'm just not going to eat. And you draw a line in the sand and you're like, this is the side I'm going to be on. Like, I'm just not eating. And so I agree with you. And I think that I can't really recall what it was like to be anything different than what I am right now, especially. But I would say that what you're describing may be more beneficial to people that have had a little bit of practice with discipline, especially as it pertains to whatever it is that we're talking. If we're talking about diet and somebody has a previous history of they've lost 20 pounds before, then I would agree 100%. And I don't even think it's a bad idea for a newbie, but I don't remember what that was like to be, new to some of this, since I've been doing some of this stuff for so long. But I do know that success breeds success. For every step forward that you take, it starts to feel like you get propelled forward, almost like you get slingshotted forward. Like in space. They'll use slingshot propulsion to propel them around like the moon, or propel them around something to kind of keep pushing them forward. And I feel like when you get momentum and you start telling people, or people just know that you don't participate in certain things, you don't do some of these things that maybe your relatives engage in and stuff, then you're kind of known for being that way. And it actually makes everything easier. And then you feel in your brain, you know, I've heard other people kind of refer to it this way too. You feel locked in, and you all of a sudden feel really comfortable and really at peace with that. And your wife knows you're that way. Your significant other knows you're that way. Your kids know that you're that way. And then if you do eat like pizza or something, that's so uncommon for you that they're like, everyone makes a deal of it, rather than people making a deal of you, you know, opening up a thing of Tupperware and eating a piece of steak or something. So I think that is an excellent point that you brought up.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I mean, I said it earlier. My mom texts me to make sure what diet I'm on right now, you know, because I have done like a high fat, I've done low fat, whatever. So it's, yeah, getting the momentum does feel pretty damn awesome. And yeah, just her knowing that, you know, like somebody who has never cared about my diet ever, but she sees me enough with dealing with like, oh shit, I can have that, I cannot have that, whatever. So that feels good. And you're right on point.
This is a really interesting thing that I was reading the other day, and it said self-discipline is a patch for being conflicted about what you want to do. So these things are really important to kind of think about when you're trying to have, quote unquote, trying to have self-discipline, and you're trying to police yourself into doing something. It shouldn't be that hard. You know, if it is that hard, it means there's a conflict there. Something else is pulling at you. And if it's, whether it's nutrition or getting on point with exercise, there could be some interruption from, it could be something that happened a long time ago. You could have childhood trauma or something like that. Or it could just be just the fact that you just love food. You know, but you're conflicted between the two. You're conflicted between, you know, being stone cold Steve Austin and flipping people off and just enjoying a bunch of beer versus being a handsome motherfucker like The Rock, mm-hmm. You know, and you kind of, you're like, oh, dude, I should be able to like just drink some beer and kick some ass, you know, but you're conflicted and you go back and forth in your own head. And I think, you know, oftentimes we view these people that are really successful as having this discipline to really force themselves to do stuff that they don't want to do. But the truth is, if you really didn't want to do it, you probably would be so conflicted that you just wouldn't do it. So there needs, you know, this is Tony Robbins type of shit, like where you need that pull, not a push. You know, if you're always pushing, you're just gonna run out of energy. It'd be like pushing, you know, your car up a hill. Yeah, maybe you can get it going a little bit, especially you got a couple people. But eventually, even those couple of people are going to get tired. You're going to get tired of that push. You need something that's pulling you towards the goal, and then there just won't be any trying. You'll just be doing because you're propelled towards it. So, I think those are all things to really and you know, I guess the other thing is really just try your best not to turn any of it into anything negative. You know, be very, very positive with yourself. You start beating yourself up, thinking that you're fat or thinking that you don't look the way you want, you're not as strong as you want to be or whatever, or you're too skinny. Whatever this dialogue is that you have in your head, you want to say like, hey, I've been doing better. You know, I'm better than I was 3 weeks ago. Like I'm better off now than I was. Or even if you slipped up quite a bit and you gained some weight back and stuff like that, are you still working towards it? Have you dedicated yourself to some of the plan? And yes, maybe you fell off a little bit and maybe you have screwed up, but these are all just detours, and try to just be super positive with figuring out a way of focusing in on the facts and how do I get back on track? How do I get back to what I was doing?
You know, it's funny. I was talking to a friend about this yesterday. And he had like the best analogy. I was like, that makes so much sense, because the way to get pulled towards something is by having a clear idea of what you like, a very, very vivid idea of what you want, or what you want to be able to achieve, whether it's dieting and you want to get to this weight and you want to be able to have these type of habits and be this healthy. You want to have some detail of what that's like. Right. And, he was saying that, people go to Starbucks and they have their drink and they know how many pumps of sugar-free caramel and how many this and that and all these details of what they want in this drink that means nothing. And when it doesn't go right, they're irate. They're pissed. Like, you didn't put enough pumps of coconut in here. I can feel it. Right. But when it comes to what you want and what you're trying to achieve in your life, you're so vague. There's so many unknowns, and you don't really put that much thought into it. And you don't put that much detail into what you got to do and what you want. But that's where you got to put detail into it, into your goals, so that you're then being pulled towards them. And it's not you're pushing towards this random idea of something that you think you want to be able to do. It's towards this thing that you are driven to try to achieve. So
I think discipline is a little bit less about discipline, and it's more about probably being less conflicted with being what you used to be. So it appears to be this great discipline that somebody has that runs, 20 miles every day, but it doesn't feel like a discipline to them because they're less conflicted about it, because it's what they love. They love to do it. Mm-hmm. And whenever I hear somebody tell me, that they really enjoy doing something, I get so happy. Like somebody tells me they love playing the piano, or their kid loves to bake, or somebody just really gets a lot of enjoyment out of, it could be anything. They get a lot of enjoyment out of riding their bike or something. I just think that is so cool, because I think that is a key factor of life, is just find, like, what are you interested in? What do you really like? What do you really enjoy? Now, to tie that into this, you're going to have to try different diets. You're going to have to try different training protocols. You're going to have to try a bunch of different things until you land on the thing that feels like it's fitting into your life and suiting you the best. You feel the most comfortable with it. And it's okay for those things to change too. Mm-hmm. Like, my diet changes all the time. I'll probably go through another period of time where I do keto. I'll go through another period of time where I do carnivore. I'll go through I guess right now I'm kind of on a bodybuilding diet, but there things are always going to shift. They're always going to move. I've been into running for the last year or so, and I'm starting to run a little bit more and more and getting more comfortable with it and more used to it. And it's all stuff that I'm drawn towards because I've given myself, it's almost like I messed around with it a little bit. I played around with it a little bit. And now it feels like the feedback that I'm getting is getting better and better. And so I knew that if I was going to go and like try to run 3 miles, that the feedback would have sucked. And I didn't want to give myself a bad experience. When I used to do personal training and I used to, work with people like one-on-one, I was always thinking like, I just want them to, all I want from this session is for them to have fun and not get hurt, And so I always had to, they would say, hey, can I go heavier? And I'd always have to remember, have fun, don't get hurt. Have fun, don't get hurt. Have fun. And then I would ask him at the end of the training session, like, hey, do you think you could handle more? Because, it was just an introductory thing. I just wanted to make sure you were comfortable with all the movements, and I wanted to, know more about your body and your history and stuff like that. And they'd be like, oh yeah, I loved it. It was great. And I just wanted to make sure that they were, not going to leave there and, 2-3 days later, just not want to come back, because they got so sore or I fucked up their elbow with some sort of movement or something like that. So just trying to give yourself, good experiences with the things that you're trying and just take your time with it.
Yeah. Would you guys say that the setbacks are necessary though?
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah, just so that way, if somebody, does, take a step back or whatever, like they don't get too hard on themselves, right? Like me, when I came off of my cut at the end of last year, like I was pretty hard on myself, but I personally feel like I needed that in order to appreciate where I am right now and where I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
That's how, without that, like I always keep saying like, oh, I wish had I known what I know now, I would still have been doing this, or I would have been following this diet, but I understand that I wouldn't be on this diet. I wouldn't have this motivation unless I had that valley to, experience this peak right now.
Yeah. I totally, it reminds me of another conversation I had yesterday, and it's a homie that boxes, and he's done a bunch of amateur boxing matches. He's never lost an amateur boxing match. And he was saying that we were talking about boxing and jiu-jitsu, but he was like, dude, I don't want to lose a match. Like, I don't mind losing in training, but I cannot lose a match. And even losing in training is frustrating. But we were both like, but it's inevitable. If you're going to get better, you're going to get messed up so many times, right? Like even Tyson, right? Because Tyson was on Rogan recently. It's funny, but even Tyson has lost matches and he's lost sparring sessions. He's gotten knocked down in sparring sessions. So we can't expect to go through this whole process of dieting or go through this whole process of weight loss without making a ton of mistakes and having a ton of losses, because you learn what not to do. When you're in a boxing match, you learn, oh, maybe I should have ducked or dodged or done something there I wasn't paying attention to, right? So you learn from that, and it's absolutely inevitable. That should never be a sign to slow down.
Andrew, to follow up your question there about, should you have setbacks and stuff like that? I mean, they are a necessary, they're a necessary part, because, all forms of knowledge come from error correction, and all forms of happiness come from being able to solve problems, and so, I mean, you can think about any aspect of your life, and you can think about anything that ever made you happy. It's because it solved something in particular for you. Could be something as silly as getting a Nintendo for Christmas. You wanted that, you enjoy video games, and it solved the problem of you not having a home entertainment system that you can play video games on. So it's hugely important that you have some errors, and some people love to just dive into stuff and fail fast, and other people might find it more beneficial to do what I did with running, like just take your time with it. And for me, that was based off of previous training history. Like jogging couldn't be any more different than what I was doing for the last 25, 30 years. So I think each person has to kind of weigh out how fast they want to kind of screw up. But every time you screw up, you need to it's not a loss. It's a learning experience. It's something that maybe you keep a journal and you write down your body weight and you keep track. But again, it's just numbers. If you look at it and you weighed 200 pounds and you've been keeping this journal and your goal was to lose weight, and you look at it and now you weigh 210, it's just factual. It's just, okay, you know what? That's the opposite direction of the way that I wanted to go. Remember what you talked about, remember what you wanted to do. Let's work on that again. Let's do that again and see if we can get it to slide in the opposite direction. This other thing that I read that was kind of part of this article I was reading the other day, but it basically said, once you're unconflicted about what you want to do, even hard work is effortless motivation-wise. So we've talked about this a bunch on the show. We love motivation. I love listening to, some of these YouTube videos where it gets you all fired up. You ever watch one of those motivational bodybuilding videos? They're great. You guys talk about, fuck it, man, you got to do an extra rep. It's all about doing more weight and pushing. And all those things are great. But I always found that ultimately that when you can eliminate motivation as a factor for you doing something, and you just end up just doing it, and then once you're doing it, you find that to be inspiring, you find that to be motivational in and of itself. I'll give you just an easy example. When I went on my walk today, I didn't run any of it, and I got towards the end and I was like, if I just run this one hill, this is 6 minutes of some kick-ass running, and it'll be a really good challenge for me. I'm like, that'll be a really good workout. I'm like, I'm going to do it. And so I just started running, and I even said to myself, I don't know how far I'm going to run. And I don't know if I'm going to do the whole thing, I got halfway and I was like, okay, you're going to do 50% of it, you know, like, come on, you chump. Like, you're going to do really? You're going to do 50, you know? And then I picked up the pace and I ran through it. I got through it. Right. And I think that most people will find that when you're in something, when you're doing something, you start to pick up this like flow that is unmatched by any motivational speech that you'll ever hear, or unmatched by where music may take you or anything. When you're moving your own body and you start to become like empowered by that movement, you're really fucking proud of yourself, and you feel amazing. You feel whatever flaws or whatever negative bullshit that you normally say about yourself, none of that's there. It's all completely gone. You feel like you're on cloud 9. You feel like you can lift 1,000,000 pounds, and you feel great. You think that you look great. Everything about you feels just super, super positive in that moment. So those are the spaces that I like to try to get myself into.
The Nike slogan's so fucking brilliant. Just do it. Like that's really all it comes down to.
Yeah, really is.
Almost as good as lift through it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What else you guys got for today? What you doing?
Me?
Yeah, Nsima, you got a trip coming up, right?
Yeah, I'm going to drive down to Santa Cruz and then head to San Jose and chill there for a little bit for the day. Come back on Sunday.
Cool. It's really hot in Sacramento today, right?
It's going to be 109 tomorrow. Actually, maybe today and tomorrow and Monday. I don't know, but it's going to hit 109, man.
Yeah. And where I'm going to end up today is, I forgot the name of the little town, but it's just like I-5 North. So it's even hotter than it is here in Sacramento, where my sister just moved.
Toasty.
It's like dry. It's just like there's no shade anywhere. I'm just like, ugh. But it's cool because they have like farm animals now. So we're going to go be country folk and have fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
That climate change, man.
Yeah.
How long are you in Bodega?
I'm going to be here through Monday. I'll be back on Tuesday. We got a podcast on Tuesday, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, probably.
Who do we got?
Yeah.
Cash or yeah.
Oh yeah, Ray Cash.
Ray Cash, there it is.
Former military. That'll be a lot of fun. Recommended by our good doctor buddy Gabrielle Lyon. So that should be really, really fun, really cool. Wow. Yeah, for today we're going to an area called Sebastopol, which is about 20-30 minutes from here, and we're celebrating Quinn's birthday. Just going to a restaurant, even though her birthday's tomorrow. It's like one of those birthday weekends, you know. It's like carries on every single day, and the weather is always really nice there. Like it's beautiful here, but it's just a little bit warmer there. You know, like here it's like 75. There it'll be like 85 or something like that, and that should be a lot of fun. And then I think tomorrow I have my parents are coming up for a little bit.
Nice.
When their birthday present, we'll just all be hanging out. But yeah, I think that was a great talk, guys. That was really cool. I think we gave people a lot of good info. I think, you know, just some take homes from a particular kind of diet side of things. I would say, you know, Andrew said he found it really helpful that when I said, you know, just to do one body part type of deal with training, that really helped him. And if you were to try to grab a hold of one thing from today's show, if you're thinking about from a nutrition standpoint, you know, I would grab a hold of the idea of, you know, just trying to increase your protein, because I think I can't think of a person that it wouldn't benefit. So try to eat more protein. And then, you know, from a more general perspective, if you're trying to pull something from this show today is, yeah, maybe just try to concentrate on one thing, and maybe just one thing at a time. You know, I did give you a list of things, but if you tried the whole list all at once, you might find it fairly challenging to start to lift, add cardio, walk, and do all those things. So maybe just pick one of those things and try to implement it. With the walking, I think it's just, I've always just found it to be so simple and easy. And if you're in an area where the climate is strange, maybe you have other places that you can walk inside of, or maybe you can, walk on a treadmill and so forth. I think gyms should be opening back up everywhere-ish soon enough. We're still pretty closed down here in California, but hopefully we stop acting so irrational at some point.
Soon. We'll see. Newsom.
Zuckerberg.
Oh, man. I forgot all about that guy. That's good stuff. Well, anywho, thank you everybody for checking out today's episode. You guys might have heard me ask some questions that you probably knew, but that's what we talked about on this podcast. So, it might feel like a stupid question to you, but maybe it's not to someone else. So if you guys have some of those stupid questions, please leave them down in the comments below, the comment section of this video. Do it on this video. I don't want to see any DMs. Can't keep up with those damn DMs right now. They're piling up. So utilize our YouTube channel. If you're on Facebook, utilize Facebook, because you guys know it's anything you guys comment, we can see it. So please utilize the comment section of this video for any more diet questions that you guys may have. Also, please make sure you're following the podcast on Instagram. I know I just kind of shitted on the DMs on Instagram, but we do have a lot of fun. Like yesterday, we put up a post about who do you guys think is going to win the Super Bowl this year. You guys went nuts. We put up a dope meme that I can't post on YouTube because it's like a minute clip. It's just like, anyways, there's a lot of stuff that you guys are missing out on if you're only catching us right now on this video. So please follow at Mark Bell's Power Project on Instagram, at MB Power Project on TikTok and Twitter. I think I'm going to spark up TikTok again. We'll see what happens. My Instagram is at I am Andrew Z. Nsima, where you at?
Nsima Inyang on Instagram and YouTube, and Nsima Inyang on Twitter. Mark?
I'm at Mark Smelly Bell. Strength is never weakness. Weakness never strength. Catch y'all later.